There is one earnings date on the calendar right now that could quietly decide where your portfolio stands by the end of the year, and almost nobody is talking about it the right way. August 4th. Mark it down because what happens around that date could set the tone for chips, for tech, and honestly, for a huge chunk of the market heading into fall. Before we get into that, and before we go through 16 stocks that deserve a serious look for this month, hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss what comes next, because we are about to walk through rankings, real numbers, and a full breakdown of where this market could be headed through the rest of the year. Let's start with the big one everyone is quietly nervous about, and that is AMD heading into its August earnings date. Here is the honest read. Going into that report, if the broader market stays even reasonably calm, the stock has every reason to run hard in the weeks before the numbers actually come out. A lot of traders are already whispering that this could be the strongest forward guidance this company has delivered in years, and that whisper alone tends to pull money in early. It is rarely the prior quarter's numbers that move a stock like this. It is the outlook. It is the next 12 months. That is what traders are going to be hanging on. Now think about what happens after the print. This is not about the next single trading day, because the day after big earnings can be messy and unpredictable, no matter which way it goes. What matters more is the 3 to 4 week stretch that follows. If the guidance really is as strong as some are expecting, do not be shocked if this stock pushes into territory that feels almost uncomfortable to buy at. Nobody should assume a number like $600 a share is guaranteed, but with the momentum this stock has built over the past several months, a surprise guidance beat could send it into levels that look extreme on paper today. Of course, there's always a version of this where the guidance disappoints and none of that plays out. Nothing in the market is ever guaranteed. But looking at where GPU demand is heading into the next quarter and how pricing and sell-through look on the CPU side, there's a real case that Wall Street's current estimates are simply too conservative. Management at this company also has a well-known habit of setting a bar they are fairly confident they can clear, especially on revenue. So if the initial guidance already looks big, there is a decent chance the actual results end up even better than that guidance once the quarter closes out. And here's the domino effect, worth understanding. When one company blows past expectations like that, it does not stay isolated. Analysts start raising price targets, then they start raising revenue estimates, then EPS estimates follow. If margins also come in better than expected, you get all three moving at once, and that combination is exactly what fuels a stock pushing higher, while more and more analysts scramble to catch up with revised targets. That chase is a powerful force in this market, and it is worth watching closely over the next month. Now let's get into the 16 stocks worth having on your radar this month, because this list spans growth names, value names, and dividend payers, and honestly, it could function as an entire portfolio on its own. The names are Netflix in the 70s, Celsius in the 30s, Nike in the 40s, ELF, Beauty in the 70s, Honest Company in the 30s, American Express now in the hundreds after climbing out of the 300s, Kava around the 70s, Estee Lauder in the 80s, SoFi in the teens, Meta in the 500s, Amazon in the 200s, Bath & Body Works in the 20s or lower, Salesforce in the hundreds, Whirlpool in the 30s, and PayPal in the 40s. Some of these are going to raise eyebrows. Whirlpool and PayPal sit firmly in the contrarian camp right now, and even names like Nike and Estee Lauder get plenty of pushback from people who think those turnarounds are taking too long. But almost every stock on this list has somebody who thinks it is a trap, and somebody who thinks it is a gift, and that is exactly what makes ranking them interesting. So where does the ranking actually start? Celsius, sitting in the 20s to 30s range, takes the top spot as the most attractive buy on this entire list right now. Right behind it comes ELF Beauty in the 70s. After that, Kava earns a strong nod. SoFi in the teens follows closely. Meta and Amazon come next, and these two deserve a quick note. Do not expect fireworks in the short term from either one. But if your time horizon stretches 5 years or more, both names look built to be dramatically higher than today's prices, even if there is a rough patch somewhere along the way. After those, Nike in the 40s earns a spot. And honestly, Netflix in the 70s might be one of the most underappreciated values on this entire list right now, considering where the business actually stands. From there, Salesforce deserves attention, alongside names like ServiceNow that have quietly become some of the most disliked stocks in this market, despite solid fundamentals. Honest Company gets a mention too, because if this business genuinely reaches the $5 range by year end, as some expect, buying it while it still trades in the threes looks like an easy call in hindsight. At the very bottom of this list sit Whirlpool and PayPal, and that is intentional. These carry the most uncertainty, but also some of the largest potential upside over the next 1 to 2 years, if their fundamentals turn around. Whirlpool needs one thing above everything else, and that is a real recovery in the housing market. Housing has been essentially frozen for a while now. If that changes, this stock has the kind of setup that could realistically double from where it sits in the 30s. But if housing stays stuck, so does Whirlpool. PayPal, on the other hand, is trading at a valuation that is genuinely hard to justify given how much cash this business still generates. It is cheap, plain, and simple. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, drop a comment letting me know which of these 16 names you already own, because I read every single one, and if you found this helpful so far, go ahead and tap that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to see this kind of breakdown. Now, let's zoom out and talk about where the broader market could be headed, because there are some very different opinions floating around right now from people who manage serious money. One well-known market strategist recently pointed out that June felt like a stall for the major averages, but he expects July to look stronger simply because valuations have become more reasonable and sentiment is nowhere near euphoric. His reasoning ties back to something worth understanding on a deeper level. When companies beat their earnings, estimates by a wide margin, the market's forward price to earnings ratio actually drops, even if the stock price stays flat, because the earnings side of that equation grew faster than the price did. That is exactly what happened during the first quarter, and it is a big reason the market's overall valuation is actually lower today than it was back in January, despite prices sitting higher. Think about Palantir as the textbook example of this idea in action. A year or so ago, this stock carried a forward price to earnings ratio north of 200, which looked absurd on the surface. Today, that multiple sites closer to the high 80s, still elevated but nowhere near as extreme, because the actual business results kept outpacing what analysts had modeled quarter after quarter. A stock can look expensive and still get cheaper, over time if growth keeps outrunning expectations. Based on that same logic, some strategists are calling for the S&P 500 to reach the 8,000 level before this year closes out, and one even argues the real upside case could push toward 8,800 if the market's multiple expands the way it has in past cycles. But almost every bullish voice adds the same caveat, and it is worth repeating. Even in a good year, there's a real chance of a rough stretch sometime between late summer and October, even if July and the immediate weeks around it stay calm. The logic here is straightforward. The bulk of major earnings reports land at the end of July and through the first few weeks of August. If those results come in strong with solid guidance, pushing the market down hard during that window becomes very difficult. It is only if earnings disappoint that a deeper pullback becomes an easier story to tell. There's also a growing debate about what counts as a real correction anymore. Earlier this year, a pullback of around 7% had people talking like it was a serious bear market, when historically that kind of move barely registers. Meanwhile, sharper drops tied to specific shock events hit much harder emotionally, even if the percentage decline ends up similar. A few things. Being flagged as potential headwinds later this year include the market adjusting to a completely new approach at the Federal Reserve, a gradual unlocking of shares tied to some of the newer high-profile private companies that may eventually go public, tightening supply in petroleum markets, and elevated margin debt across the system. Any one of these on its own might not do much, but together they represent real risk worth tracking. Heading into the fourth quarter. Here's an interesting point some are making. If a real bear market did hit later this year, seasoned long-term investors who consistently buy on a schedule almost welcome that scenario, because historically, sharp downturns have produced some of the best entry points in market history. The catch is that calling the timing of something like that is nearly impossible, and betting against the market too early has burned plenty of smart investors before. Now let's shift to semiconductors specifically, because this is where opinions get the most heated right now. One prominent strategist made an important distinction. He said the easier bearish case is not for this year at all, it is actually for next year. Once some of the newer, high-profile private companies eventually go public and potentially struggle, right, as semiconductor names could be topping out around the same window. His personal plan going forward involves hedging rather than shorting outright, potentially using inverse tools tied to the NASDAQ if chip stocks run up sharply into year-end. On rates, the conversation keeps circling back to a new chapter at the Federal Reserve and a new Treasury leadership pushing hard to anchor the long end of the yield curve, mainly because the amount of government debt outstanding makes lower long-term rates almost a necessity for managing the country's finances. Interestingly, precious metals have struggled through this transition, partly because a stronger dollar accompanied these leadership changes, and markets tend to price in major shifts well before they officially happen. Oil is another area worth mentioning, mostly as a lesson in humility. Earlier this year, plenty of well-known voices were calling for oil to spike dramatically higher, with some even floating numbers as high as $150 or $200 a barrel. None of that materialized, and crude actually settled back down into a much calmer range. The lesson here is simple. Commodity price predictions are some of the hardest calls to get right in this entire market. And chasing energy stocks based on someone's dramatic oil price forecast has burned a lot of portfolios over the years. On the technology side specifically, there is a fascinating tension developing between the companies spending massive amounts on infrastructure and the companies actually benefiting from that spending. These two groups usually move together, but lately the relationship has been stretched. Capital expenditure relative to revenue has been climbing sharply, partly encouraged by recent policy changes that reward businesses for spending sooner rather than later. But that trend appears to be peaking now, and some of the biggest spenders have started underperforming over the past month and a half. One major company even hinted recently that it might start renting out excess computing capacity rather than only consuming it internally, which is being read as an early signal that this spending cycle needs to catch its breath. That does not mean the broader infrastructure build-out is finished. Far from it. These companies just raised meaningful amounts of capital in the credit markets recently, and that capital still needs to be deployed. But relative to the total size of these companies' overall spending plans, those raises are actually fairly small, which suggests there simply is not unlimited room to keep pushing capital. Spending dramatically higher every single year without straining balance sheets, diluting shareholders, or eating deeply into free cash flow, somewhere around 2027 or 2028, this dynamic likely reaches a turning point where spending growth flattens out. And that expectation alone is already shaping how some investors are positioning their semiconductor exposure today, with several trimming positions gradually over the coming months rather than waiting for an obvious top. So how should you personally think about chip stocks over the next 6 to 12 months? Here is a fair way to frame it. This is not really a place to be adding fresh new money right now if you are not already positioned, but it is also not a place to bet against either. Many of these names could realistically put in a multi-year top sometime between now and early next year, and buying into a potential multi-year top is rarely a comfortable trade. But shorting them carries its own danger, because the upside, if this rally has more room to run, could be enormous, and short sellers or put buyers can get wiped out chasing a top that keeps refusing to arrive. Even after a stock like this eventually peaks, history shows it rarely crashes immediately. More often, it grinds sideways for a year or two, trading in a wide range without giving either bulls or bears much satisfaction. A well-known chip stock that peaked last year is a great real-world example of exactly this pattern, still sitting near those same highs today after months of choppy back and forth without a real breakdown or a real breakout. That kind of range-bound grind, followed eventually by a real correction, is a realistic outcome worth planning for across several of the biggest names in this sector. If any part of this breakdown changed how you're thinking about your own portfolio this month, that is exactly why this channel exists. And sharing this with someone who owns any of these 16 stocks would genuinely help them see the full picture too. Drop your own take in the comments on which of these rankings you agree with and which ones you would flip, because these conversations in the comment section end up shaping a lot of what gets covered here going forward. Stick around and subscribe if you want to stay ahead of what could be a very pivotal earnings season heading into August, because between chip stocks, mega cap tech, and this broadening rally into smaller names, the next few months could genuinely reshape portfolios heading into next year.